Good evening. And if you're just tuning in, you're listening to 105.3 and 107.7 out of the beautiful city of New Orleans, the UFO Paranormal Radio Network, or we like to also call it, as by its other name, United Public Radio Network, or just easily UPRN. And this is the Angel Rock. I am the host here of this show. I was going to say I'm one of the hosts because I'm used to introducing Thursday's show. But first, let me tell you a little bit about myself, then I'll tell you about my second show. My name is Lorilei Potvin. I am a Canadian clairvoyant medium, crystal Reiki energy healer, Akashic Records practitioner, spiritual teacher and mentor, very well versed in the paranormal, budding animal communicator, and RN. And I also co-host a second show on the network here called The Thing at the Foot of the Bed with my very good friend. He's an amazing medium and angel channel. His name's David Hansel. That's 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on Thursdays. And it's called, like I said, The Thing at the Foot of the Bed. As you know, we've got some of our regular people. We've got Kevin or Z-Sun Dragon already here. Both shows are very audience participative, and we love to make you part of the show, because if you weren't here, it would just be me and my lovely guest having a wonderful chat. We'd like you to join in. Now, this month till the end of January, as you well know, I'll start over. We have our own TV channel on Roku. And for this month till the end of January, we're trying out the Angel Rock on Roku. So if you want to watch it over there, you're going to go to the channel store and you're going to type in UFO space P as in paranormal. There's a drop-down list. We're about the third or fourth one down. You're looking for UFO space paranormal and United Public Radio. And as you well know, we stream also The Thing at the Foot of the Bed over there. So that's another option for you to watch. Also, if you like what you see, please like, share, and subscribe, and tell all your friends and family about our network. It's been around for over 25 plus years, and we have multiple amazing shows streaming 7 days a week. And when we're not streaming, we have the archive server randomly picking shows over the last 25 plus years. So there's something for everyone here. Okay, I think I have remembered everything. I have to go off the top of my head. I don't read a script, but I'm going to introduce you to my guest. Now, some of you are newer here because the Angel Rock's going on 5 years being on this network and has been a show on a previous network years ago. So it's been around for a while, but she was on this network with me, I think my first year, and we've been friends ever since. And we do touch base from time to time. My lovely guest's name is Constance V. Victoria Briggs. She's a metaphysical, spiritual, cosmic researcher and writer. It is her goal to investigate the mysteries of the universe and how they connect to humanity. Tonight, we're discussing her two newest books about the mysteries found on the moon and Earth, as well as chatting possibly about UFOs, ETs, all kinds of things. She's well versed in near-death experiences, which I forgot to mention. I have studied professionally and personally for over 40 years. Also had one as a toddler. And I also added, if you're a fan of the ufology and strange and wonderful, mysterious things on the Earth and the moon, you're in the right place tonight. So welcome, Constance. I'm so glad to have you back.
Hi, thank you for having me. I'm happy to be back.
You've been a busy lady, because we touched base, I think, in the summer, and please give me the whole title, because I knew I was going to screw it up. The first book, the new one you had, was the one about the moon, right?
The moon's galactic history and its extraterrestrial connection.
There you go. And now you have another book out, right? And do they go hand in hand? Go ahead and
It's a companion book. It's a companion book, at least I'm calling it that. The Earth's galactic connection and its extraterrestrial connection. The story continues.
Wow. Okay. So we had so much to talk about the last time you were on here, because I think I even have one of your books before I even knew you. And it was about angels, I think.
Oh.
And then the moon. You've written so many books, but please tell me, how did the moon book start? And then we morph into the companion book about the Earth.
Yeah, the moon book started, it was interesting. I had written a little book called the Encyclopedia of Moon Mysteries, Secrets, Conspiracy Theories, Extraterrestrials, Anomalies, and more.
Okay.
And it's a mouthful. The reason I had written that book was because, I had come across all these amazing stories about the moon, and some of them were proven, and some of them were theory, and some of them were mysteries. All of these interesting things that were going on, lights up there, structures found, etc. And people really liked it, but people wanted to hear my voice. I like writing encyclopedias, but people were saying they wanted a narrative. And it was good that, they were saying, telling me this because I had more information that I couldn't get into the Moon Mysteries book because, there's not so much space. So what I decided to do is to write a narrative on the moon. I decided to approach it by telling the moon story. I kind of asked, if the moon was telling its story, what would it say? Because it certainly has one. When we look at the moon, we wouldn't think there was anything going on, right, with it.
Oh, I don't know, because you know what I did
Okay.
throw in there.
I
Joe
guess it depends
Montaldo,
on the
I'm going to give
audience.
him a shout out. I always try to. He's the owner of UPRN, and we'll call it UPRN, not the big long title. And you know what? He provides this wonderful space for people to come together. And he also has ICAR, International Center for Alien Research. I have missing time, never mind my paranormal story. My mother and Joe's done a 20 plus year study on Rh negative blood, red hair, and green eyes. And I don't have that, but my mother does. Now, she doesn't believe in any of this, but I blinked my eyes and ended up miles away from where I was in my own city. An hour and a half had passed. My car was in the opposite direction. I was amazed I had cell service. I was in front of this half moon shaped building, windows all broken out. It was somewhere rural outside the city. I didn't even know it existed. And the reason why I remember opening my eyes, my cell phone was ringing, and it was my husband going, "Where the heck are you?" I was literally supposed to just be going to the store 2 minutes away and be back. So I believe in all this. And the other thing I'm going to add, I don't like the word conspiracy theory. I call it truth seeking. Because Joe calls me conspiracy princess. I don't think I'm conspiracy princess. I'm a truth seeker.
Okay, well, you know what? We are not conspiracy theorists. We are truth seekers. You are correct. But sometimes, just using the verbiage out there helps to make things more simple, you know. Or if you want someone to read the book, I mean, they're only going to read it if if you use certain, catchphrases. So, for some people, it gets their attention and they'll pay more attention. But for those of us who are immersed in it, we know that, it's the truth,
It is
So,
the truth. Like I am
yeah.
at the point now, and I actually living where I live, smack dab in the middle of Canada on the shore. It's on the shores of Lake Superior. I explain it to people so they'll know. You have to go through my city, going from the west to the east or the east to the west through Canada. Or if you want to go into southern Ontario or even into the US further south, if you don't want to go around the lakes the US way. I'm about 6.5 hours north of Minneapolis, Minnesota, but we have practically everything you could think of in the paranormal in this city. I have videos that I think are of some type of, well, I'll say UFO. It's an unknown flying object. Like we don't know what it is. And yeah, people have accounts, you name it, Bigfoot, Sasquatch, Dogman, hauntings. I have some incredible pictures people have sent me of things they have taken just in this. I don't know what it is, but this city's got some crazy activity.
Well, that's cool because it keeps you busy, it keeps you interested. Huh. I
Mhm.
wouldn't mind.
You know what? I'm going to back up a bit because I forget. I will say how we got Zafrius Rusnake. I hope I say this right. Rusnake, I think, and Mish from Australia. We got Adriana and Nicoletta. She's one of our hosts on the network. Her show was earlier today, Negotiating Happiness. Are you proud of me, Adriana? I remembered, and I love Adriana. She's so sweet. So how did you get involved in all of this? Like, was there something going on in your childhood or into adulthood? Like, how did you get involved in what we would call the paranormal world, right?
Yeah. So you know what? I totally started off with what, I call, the paranormal world, and then I thought my
I put
galactic
them
life.
all together because to me, the paranormal is just anything that people don't think is the norm. And I have a saying, what it is what people think is the norm, I think is actually the abnormal, and the abnormal is the norm. It really seems that way when you start
It
digging.
seems to me that paranormal is really the normal, right? Is that
Yeah.
what you're saying? Yeah, the paranormal is normal. There is no paranormal. But again, it's one of those catchphrases that to get someone's attention, you can't say, oh, that's, the normal. You got to throw that para in there so they'll kind of pay attention and start,
See your stuff
researching or
up.
whatever. Yeah, yeah. So basically, gosh, when I was young, I felt like I had some sort of uh, pull towards something spiritual. I was always looking for, the reason for being. Why are we here? Asking the same old questions you hear in the books. Why are we here? Why? What's our reason for being? What's our mission? How do we get here? I searched religion. I was very for a while. I was very much into Bible studies and things, trying to find answers. But along the way, I would say, starting in my 20s, I started having different paranormal experiences.
Okay.
And so, it just became a part of my journey of searching. Then I had all of these strange things happening to me
Mm-hmm.
that I couldn't explain.
Mm-hmm.
And eventually, well, I mean, things like, when I was living single, I had some entity in my apartment for a long time, couldn't get rid of it. I was in an apartment building. I do believe that entities come and go in apartment buildings a lot because there's so many people coming and going,
And
and
energy, right?
bringing energies with them.
Energy.
They're bringing beings with them. They're being, so it's just coming and going. I think I crossed paths with something. So, I mean, I had that experience trying to get rid of it out of my apartment.
Mm-hmm.
I learned that, there are beings on the other side. Some refer to them as angels. Another catchword, because I think angels is more than what we've been taught here. It's always, being with wings. And I adore them. I adore beings with wings. And I adore anything to do with angels, but they are more than what we see in religion. And I wish there was a different word. I know that they're extraterrestrial in nature because they're not from us, okay? But I had experiences where, where was learning to call on them and they helped. But
Love it.
somewhere along the line, it was really starting to get interesting in my late 20s. I was living single and I started having out of body experiences, conscious out of body experiences.
Mm-hmm.
And gosh, the first time I left the body, and I lived single, and I left the body that night, and I woke up in the sky, and I knew what was happening. I knew what it was. I could look down. For those of you in Alexandria, Virginia, I lived right near the Woodrow Wilson Bridge. I could look down and see the cars
Wow.
going back and forth, and I knew what it was. It was amazing, and I've been leaving my body ever since. I don't know what kicked in or what happened. Maybe the entity scared me out of my body that night. I don't know, because it was doing all kinds of weird things in my apartment. But from
I
that
think we
point,
can do it naturally. Like when we dream, I think that we astral travel and that can have OBEs and we don't even realize it. Not
yeah,
everybody, though. I think some people have to train to be able to do it consciously. Like this sounds like this is something that came very naturally to you to realize where you were. Whereas I've talked to people where they've done it when they've been sleeping, but they just think it's a dream.
oh
And
yeah,
it's so real.
yeah, and so when I say conscious, I mean I literally mean
I
being
believe.
out of the body in the sky, going, oh, I know what this is. How do I, get back? And but yeah, so life got really interesting there. I had those paranormal experiences with an entity learned to call on angels, but other things have happened to me too. They continue to happen, but they're on a positive note, a positive spin. Both of my parents who have crossed over have come back to let me know that
Oh,
they're well and fine. And I tell you, after going through 30 odd years of these experiences and this research, it just comes to a time where it just feels like things at one point came together. I learned about the angels, I learned about, ghosts and entities, and it was like a step by step. And then I learned that I had guides around me,
yeah.
and they were telling me something about extraterrestrials. I
Mhm.
can, we all have ways that our guides can reach us. All right. So I can hear like phrases, not in my physical ears, but just phrases that said, just come in. And they were saying something about extraterrestrials and all this stuff. I said, are you kidding me? So it took me steps to get to this point. So with that said, I started writing books on the spiritual,
Mhm.
the Encyclopedia of Angels, the Encyclopedia of God. Then I learned about the other side, and I wanted to share that with people so they would understand how to reach and communicate with their loved ones. So I wrote the Encyclopedia of the Unseen World. It's a book for newbies. I call, for people who haven't heard the information, who don't know what goes on when you see the light. If you believe in the light or angels, you can go A to Z there. But then I moved into the cosmic and the galactic, and I learned that we are not alone in the universe.
Okay.
All right. So all of this came together. I had kids. This was before I had kids. I had kids. I raised them. I continued my research. I did some writing. But then, it just like, it was like downloads. My guides were saying, you need to work on this stuff. You let people know you're not alone in the universe. They're not alone in the universe. There are others out there. And that's how these books really came to be. So I started with the moon because I was so fascinated, because I had no clue growing up that the moon was anything more than, as they say, a dead rock in the sky.
Well, like Michelle added, people, you guys, I see you. If I don't get a chance to say hi, we've got Julie Jean Bassett here. You guys check her out. Amazing animal communicator. She's the shamanic practitioner. We've got Ruth Kleber here. We've got Roger Garza. So I'm sure Faye's in the background. Who else? I hope I didn't miss anybody else. If I did, I'm sorry, guys, but I see you and I hear you. But Michelle says she's over in Australia, probably getting ready for work. It's Tuesday morning. So thanks for popping in, everybody, especially, like I said, Michelle, getting ready for work probably. She says, I love how the moon affects the oceans and water, and we are 80% water. No wonder we are affected by it. So did you touch on any of that kind of stuff in your book, or what did you touch on? Like, that's why I said you didn't have to send me questions, because I already have a gazillion to ask you. And so is our audience going to have it too.
Yeah, so in the Moon Mysteries book, I did touch on that. The whole lunatic terminology talks about, how the moon affects us because we are made up of water. So, when it's we can feel its pull and it affects our moods. It's been interesting because on a full moon, there have been police officers who have stated that there's more crime and there's more violent
A
crime.
nurse here, I can tell you beyond a shadow of a doubt. Working, and after my first year of university, I worked as a non-registered, they called me, and they made up a title, non-registered nursing assistant. And I can tell you beyond a shadow of a doubt, working in the NICU, any floor, all heck always breaks loose. It doesn't matter if it's medical emergencies, babies being born, people more violent. And we would all turn to each other and say, it's got to be a full moon. And somebody would check, and sure enough, full moon. Always.
Isn't that something? And people don't believe it. You have to have, the professional to come and say, yeah, there's really something to that. There, and they call it that. There's the word lunatic because, of course, Luna, and then they added that on. People really can go crazy because it is affecting our body, and it can affect the menstrual cycle. And
Oh,
so, yeah,
absolutely.
can you imagine if we were educated with this kind of information?
I say
We
that
could
all
take
the
some
time.
kind, right? We could prepare.
Can I tell this person here? So, Zafrias, you're asking where Constance's links are. We always leave time at the end, but your website's pretty easy to find. You want to let them know because they can find it pretty easy, Constance.
Yeah, it's ConstanceVictoriaBriggs.com.
There you go.
And guys, I have to tell you, I'm trying to get started on TikTok and Instagram, but I am all over Facebook. I mean, you can get me updates on there and ask me questions under Constance Victoria Briggs. I've got a couple of pages. Oh, and I've got a Moon Mysteries page. If you're on there, look for the Moon Mysteries page because I'm always putting
Okay.
information over there.
Wow, cool. Because I tagged you. I have 2 accounts on Instagram. I tagged you on YouTube. I tagged you on LinkedIn. I looked for you on TikTok. I didn't find you, but I figured either you were just starting, or because I thought I'd seen something with you.
I took it down. I'm going to start a new page on
Okay.
there. I take the old one
Yeah,
down.
because I was sure I'd seen your page on there. So that's why
Yeah,
I was looking for you.
Long
Oh,
story.
Howie. How
Back
can
up
I
and we
forget
can.
Howie? Oh my gosh, I have to say hi to Howie. Howie Odell. All these people are our regulars. Michelle says she's off today in Australia, so she's here for the whole show. Awesome. Howie owns the Riff Nation Network. He has amazing programming over there, amazing hosts, and he's a big supporter of our network. And my co host David and I are working on joining Rhonda and Howie on his show sometime in February, hopefully on Sunday. Still haven't heard back from Dave yet, Howie. He's getting back to me, though. Sorry, I had to throw that in there. Um, Oh, she said, Zafrias just said, Augie. Great. Augie is a good friend of both of ours.
Right. I was on his show 2 nights ago. Yeah.
Broadcast Team Alpha.
Sorry.
Broadcast Team Alpha.
Podcast
Yeah.
Team Alpha. I've been on there 3 or 4 times now. Love
Yeah.
those guys over there, Augie and Nori.
Mm-hmm. So let's get into your book. Like, what kind of, I know you're not going to give it all away, but some of the mysteries, because the one question I'm going to start off with, and I've heard this theory and I don't know what to believe. Do you think the moon is actually organic, or do you think it was manufactured?
Oh, I definitely think it was manufactured.
Why?
There's nothing organic about our moon. This is why I wrote the book. I was shocked.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So there was this ufologist in the 70s named Don Wilson, who wrote a book, 2 books. The first one was Our Mysterious Spaceship Moon. The second one was Mysteries of Our Mysterious Spaceship Moon, or something like that. But I was fascinated. He had put in a whole lot of stuff in there. Just one little book that I had never heard of, for example. And this is where the manufacturing comes in. He talked about some of the things that the astronauts had found on the moon and brought back from the moon. He was saying how it
They
showed
went
that.
there?
Sorry.
Do you believe they actually landed on the moon?
Okay, so I do believe we landed. I believe we landed. I know there are many people who don't, but fortunately, you don't have to believe that we landed on the moon to understand that the moon, that there's something going on up there, and it's unusual. All right. So there were these 2 scientists out of Russia. A lot of you might know this very famous story. So these 2 scientists out of Russia worked for the Russian government, put their reputations on the line by writing a paper that talked about how the moon was not just a dead rock in the sky, how they thought it was a spaceship. Now, why would 2 Russian scientists put their reputations on the line unless they had something there? Well, they were looking at the Apollo astronauts' findings when they went up. All right, so they brought back this material from the moon, and basically what they discovered is that the moon was made up of these elements, these metals that were so strong. They said that it couldn't be real. It looked just like someone had put this thing together, and that it was covered in some sort of coating to make it look like a planet or something, and was designed, they thought, to be sent across space. They said it was very, very tough, very strong, and that it could withstand any bombardment of meteors and radiation or anything, and that it was probably hidden. And they wrote this. Russia or the Soviet Union didn't play.
No, they
They're
would
not
have
going
went to
to just
prison. To prison in Siberia if you'd never hear or see of them ever again. Put their name
this
on
is
it.
going to take something so lightly. But these guys thought they had to say it. So they were looking at, what the astronauts brought back by the rocks and the coating of the moon and all of this. And they said to them it looked like it was a spaceship. And they believed that there were beings in it that had engines and, all kinds of necessities to go across space. And so that someone parked it here, basically. And that's where that title, Spaceship Moon, if you've ever heard it before, that's where it came from. And those guys were onto something. Now, in my book, I decided to tell the moon story, and I kind of started from that point. I talked about how people believe that it's a spaceship, but the theories behind why someone would bring the moon here are several. One of the, and I think the biggest ones, is that someone out there, someone way older than the human race, some species of beings, saw Earth and possibly thought it was a good candidate for more life, and that it needed to be stabilized. And once they did it, life flourished here. It wasn't without growing pains, of course, because the moon caused problems coming in. It caused storms and earthquakes and all this. Now, how do I know that? Because there is a artifact in Peru. It's called the Sun Gate of Bolivia, and or the Gateway of the Sun. It's got several titles. This artifact stands in Peru at a place where the ancients of that time used it for an observatory. And on the writings of this gateway, it says that the moon was brought in. It came in, and that it created havoc, in the world, and that it caused the days to change, the time to change, the years to, the days, how many days are in a year, all of that. The calendar changed, and I don't believe that the people from back then were playing a hoax. I don't believe they were writing graffiti.
They had no reason to.
Telling a story for us, and it matched up really well with what the Russian scientists were saying, that there was someone in this ship. This ship designed to look like a moon or a planet. Very interesting. I like to tell people my little fun story with this, and that involves Star Trek and Gene Roddenberry, because I'm a Star Trek fan.
Me too.
You too. I really believe that his mission on Earth was to educate us about.
I think he channeled all of it. I think he channeled all of Star Trek and everything.
I don't know if he channeled, but I do know that he was sitting in on channeling sessions.
I will give you that. I just know somebody channeled that information.
Her name was Phyllis. I think it was Phyllis Schlimmer. I don't know how to say her name. I'm sorry.
Was it a woman?
Schlimmer or Schlimmer? Sorry.
Was it a woman?
I was a woman.
Now you know why Gene Roddenberry, that probably goes. No, I get it. All makes sense. For the time period back then, yes, that makes sense.
So he was sitting out on these sessions, and the story is that she was channeling beings that said they were, located near Earth in a giant ship, and that there were beings from different planets on the ship, and that they were traveling the universe in a mission of peace, and they were here to help us.
Well,
all right. They were limited in what they could do, but they were here to do what they could. And so she channeled this information. Gene was sitting in on it. And the story is that Star Trek was inspired from those sessions, and even some of the scripts were inspired from those sessions. So here's my little fun moon part. There was a script that he wrote. The Earth is hollow, and I have touched the sky is the name of it. Not the moon is hollow. The Earth is hollow, and I have touched. No, excuse me. The world is hollow, and I have touched the sky is the name of the episode from the original Star Trek series in the 60s.
Okay.
My favorite episode, even though I can't get the name right. Too many books that sound similar.
It's a mouthful.
Right. So basically, in the story that Gene Roddenberry wrote that turned into a script, Captain Kirk and his crew were on a mission to stop an asteroid from crashing into one of the Federation planets.
Okay.
So Captain and Spock and a few others beamed over to this thing, and they get there to this asteroid. It looked like an asteroid in space, but when they first stepped off, they saw structures on the asteroid. And on the asteroid, two beings came out. They were humanoid, and they took them inside of the asteroid, which had an elevator leading down. This thing was a spaceship, not an asteroid. And inside of it, they had a race of beings. I forget the name of them. They were all humanoid. They had been living on this thing, traveling across space. The ship had been programmed to meet up at a certain point where they would then exit the ship after thousands of years because something had happened to their planet. And the people on the ship thought they were on a planet. And I just wonder if Gene Roddenberry wrote that around something he heard. This was before we went to the moon.
The moon, yeah. Mm-hmm.
So that was very interesting because that is pretty much what is being thought about the moon, that the moon is hollow, that there are beings inside of it, and that there have been beings outside of it. Now, why do we think this? I wrote it in the Moon's Galactic History. I don't know if you guys have seen this or not.
Yes, please hold the books up for people, because people do buy these books from this show, I can tell you, because I've had people reach out to me and show me.
Here. So, where was I? So,
okay, about the moon.
Structures on the moon. All right. Now, even if you don't believe that the Apollo missions went to the moon, before the missions, went up, NASA had sent up probes to the moon, and they had taken pictures, and it came back showing structures on the moon and all of these things. And there was a huge to-do, big to-do at NASA with what we know now is covering up images, Xing them out, marking them out, whistleblowers coming forward and said, you know what, I saw them covering up structures on the moon on, pictures and all this stuff. So they did that, when there was before the astronauts were going up, we had, the lunar orbiters and things. And so anyway, there are structures on the moon. And some of the researchers back then pointed out that those structures, the pictures that did escape being destroyed or the imaging X'd out, showed, going back and forth, sorry, I'm going off camera, I think. I'm so excited.
I know, because it moves opposite to what you think it's supposed to.
All right. So that those structures look like they have been blown to bits. Some of the structures look like they're intact. Some of them look like they've been through a war. And that really confused people. Not only were they finding structures, but they were saying that some of them looked like they, were partial structures. So someone had been up there. It looked like there was some sort of war. And if you putting the Apollo astronauts aside, for people who just really don't want to think they went, they were seeing lights moving across the surface of the moon way back to when the telescope was just, had been created. Mm-hmm. So that had nothing to do with astronauts. It showed that something was going on up there.
Something is, because I'm going to throw in here, and Howie O'Dell saying yes, lots of people are going, wow, listening to this, because you see there's people that look at the skies, obviously, but you would know this too, and many of our audience, but also there's people that tap into the live cameras. I think it's from the International Space Center, and there has been, it looks like things coming off of the dark side of the moon, like ships leaving, ships coming in. And somebody had asked, is there a city on the dark side of the moon? So you've got lots, and some country bombed the moon and it rung like a bell, somebody else said. I don't know. Have you heard that? I know I'd heard something about the moon ringing like a bell, but I never had time to look into it.
Okay, so if I forget that thought, let me know, because I'm going to start at the beginning again and try to move up. I'm going to start from the 1600s.
I'll keep Michelle's comment up here to remind us, because we'll get so enthralled with 20 million other things.
I want to address it. So if you go back to the 1600s and move forward through time,
right,
they kept records from way back then.
Yes, we did.
And NASA knew it, by the way. They knew that something was going on with the moon. So those astronomers, some of the astronomers of old that, were recording things, we kept records. They would say a number of them saw lights moving across the surface, lights moving above the surface during lunar eclipse. They saw lights. Yeah. They saw them in all geographic shapes, colors, sizes, near the craters, all over the place. They were seeing what they described as lights. Of course, they had no concept of a UFO or a ship, so that's how they described them, or they would say stars. All
Mhm.
right, we know that and some of them were dotted around the craters, which we say now are ships lined up on the crater. That's what they were seeing, and they kept track of this. And there was a book commissioned by NASA,
Okay.
to put all this together. So if you move it forward through time, it was scientific fact by back then. Because of all of this they were finding, they considered it scientific fact that people existed on the moon. So here comes, modern day scientists, and they're looking at the moon and they're thinking it's hot, it's cold. Nobody can look up there. Nothing can grow up there. Nothing can be up there. No, there's nothing on the moon. But then they've got this. I don't have it here in front of me. This little handbook put out by NASA. Then they had all that information, and they never addressed it. They didn't say what it was, who was causing all that commotion up there. They just said, okay, it can't take place. So they left this huge mystery. So
Right.
then the Apollo astronauts go up, and they sent up the lunar orbiters. Like I said, they sent up before Apollo. There were Gemini and Mercury missions, and there were forerunners to the Apollo missions, and they were seeing stuff. As soon as we were able to put those guys out there, and also Russia, by the way, Russia was going out too before anyone landed on the moon.
What
They
was
were
a
all
race, right? Like between the United States and Russia, if I remember correctly.
there was a race.
Like a race to
Yeah,
get there,
yeah.
like whoever would get there
Yeah.
first or do the most with it, with the research and the discoveries and mhm.
I'm just saying that they were all, as they were going out there, they were seeing things before we got to the moon. It was almost like we were being followed or watched to see how far we would get. And
Interesting.
the Russian astronauts ran into some problems with UFOs out there too. But anyway, so we finally get to the Apollo astronaut. You're really talking about Apollo 11 was the first landed the first men on the moon, but they were not the first ones to run into UFOs. All right, it was I think Apollo 8, Apollo 9, 8 or 9 that went out and they first saw a UFO,
Wow.
and this thing was big, and it was weirdly shaped. It was not a disc, it was white. They did get pictures of it. You can see the pictures on the internet, guys, by the way. And they tried to cover these UFO up in the pictures with duct tape because they didn't have our technology that we
Yeah.
do now, or
Okay.
they didn't even try to use a marker. They used duct tape. I call it the duct tape, you know, uh, Watergate. But whatever happened, someone leaked a picture of the thing anyway, and you could see this UFO. So then they get to Apollo 11. They finally land men on the moon. And for the guy who was asking about the ringing like a bell, they crashed the ascent stage, which was part of the lunar module,
Mhm.
into the moon, and it rang like a bell. Didn't really sound like a bell, it reverberated for a long time, and they couldn't
Howie
explain.
said that. I got to read his comment from you. He says, "Oh, look at what the shuttle filmed during the 80s, even marking found on the shuttle and the modules." He says, "Constance is on fire tonight."
Hi, I'm on fire! Woo! Thanks, Howie.
Well, I've
um,
been hearing about this on TikTok. This is a thing right now. So Marshall, hi Marshall. Marshall Martin says, with a laser pointed at the surface of the moon, they could hear any activity going on in it or on it. So governments know. But what I'm going to add, the new thing on TikTok I've been seeing and hearing, because I do a lot of research for the Thursday night show. And people are taking those laser pointers and they find green is most effective and they're shining it at the moon and certain star constellations and something is blinking back. And it's,
oh,
I've
no
seen
kidding.
this, yeah.
Really?
Mhm.
Okay, I haven't seen that, but I want to address that. Okay,
Okay.
so so
See, I told you we're going to have to send me questions. I have so many and our audience will too, because we got such a great audience.
yeah, I just want to say that when they crashed that thing in to the moon and it reverberated, it wasn't us guessing that the moon was hollow. It was NASA scientists who had a press conference and said, this shouldn't have happened. It seems like the moon is hollow. We don't even want to address it. This shouldn't have happened. So they said it. All right.
Mhm.
And then they did it again a couple of trips later. They did it again, and same thing happened. So there is thought to be a lot of cavities in the moon, open areas. If someone lives in there or did live in there, it would be interesting to go down into the moon and actually see it. And there is talk of there being craters that are bottomless. Now, I don't know how they discovered a bottomless crater, but
Yeah.
something like a bottomless crater reminded me of that James Bond movie where, they had gone inside of, or I don't know if they were filming it or something about them going inside. You could see the inside of this moon that they were investigating or something. Reminded me of the movie, but anyway. So something is in there. Whether or not people left, it's debatable. They're still seeing lights up there, so I think someone is still in there. Some
Oh,
people think
absolutely.
there's a theory that they've vacated, but I can't see how. Now, what I wanted to say about that flashing lights. So in my book, I talk about signs and signals from the moon, and one of the things is there was a time where there were lights flashing on the moon,
Hmm.
and it kind of looked like there was signals coming from someone on the moon, and they were wondering, the theory is that they were trying to signal Earth, by flashing these lights.
Like a Morse
Um,
code kind of thing.
Sound like a kind of a Morse code. And it could be a thing. And it just really led me to believe that, for whatever reason, there would be someone up there. You have to wonder if there are some people stuck up there or trapped up there, with some sort of government that won't let them go. Maybe they were asking for help, because, it's just weird. We have photographs of uh, ships, fleets of ships, looking like they're leaving the moon. And I would think, wow, where are they going? They're coming to Earth. Are those some of the ships coming to Earth? But you've got that, but then you've got lights flashing towards the Earth. Why are these two different, peoples? And the other thing is, since the thing is not a spaceship, and it's even scientists are saying, I mean, not organic and is a spaceship. Even some scientists are throwing this out now that it's not organic, that's a mega structure. So if that is the case, then no, I'm losing my train of thought.
I
Um,
hear you because this
yeah,
happens to me because you're thinking about what you're going to say, then you're thinking about that. And if you're clairaudient or you hear it, I'm hearing spirit at the same time. So I lose my train of thought. So
yeah,
I do.
I forgot. I'm sorry, guys.
Well, what I do want to, okay, so Kevin, or Z-Sun Dragon, his screen name, he says he thought it was white light flashing.
White lights flashing, several. Is that what you mean?
Yeah,
Um,
because that's what we were talking. Now I remember because I was listening so intent. We were talking about these flashing lights, and why are we getting flashing lights coming from one side, yet the other sides we're seeing these
oh,
ships coming
right. So,
from the dark
right,
side of
they're
the moon.
sophisticated enough that was my thought, that they've got these ships, obviously. So why are they flashing lights? Could there be someone else? Could there be more than one group up there? And also, what I was going to lead into is the moon. Yeah, I remembered. Thank you, Mr. Sun Dragon.
That's Kevin. Kevin.
Okay. Yeah, is the moon is the moon a country up to onto itself?
Oh,
Does it have its own government? Its own culture? We're
reading my
calling.
girl because I got a question about that Galactic Federation because of what they're advertising with Gaia, and they got clips of Paul Hellyer and another government official that was involved in this. Like everybody's talking about this in this series they've got out on Gaia right now. Mhm.
Well, I don't watch Gaia. I like
I
Gaia, I
don't
just don't
either,
watch
but
it.
you see it, like you see these clips if
Yeah,
you're
I haven't seen the clips, but it's been a busy holiday season.
Mhm.
I didn't see much in the last 3 weeks. I'm just getting, back to normal. So if it's been out lately, I haven't seen it. But I do wonder if, the moon has a culture, someone up there with a culture, not just a base of entities that are there for whatever, because there is a theory that there are entities on the moon that are watching Earth. They are watching the solar system from the moon and reporting back, and that
Right.
there is a base on the dark side of the moon. But
Mhm.
maybe, and maybe it's both. you never know what's going to be going on another
I
world, on
almost
another
feel when they
planet.
feel into it intuitively, and I've heard so many stories. I've heard one of the first moon missions up there, they did run into entities and were told not to kind of come back. I don't know what's true, what's not. I almost feel into it like it's almost like a refueling station, but you're right. Why are we getting lights flashing almost Morse code like from the side we can see? But the dark side cameras are, and it seems like they come in there and then some are leaving. Like it almost seems like they're going in like what, for refueling, maybe debriefing. I don't know.
Right. Anything could be going on up there. And
Mm-hmm.
there are several theories, and I did put them, all in my book. We just don't know. All I know is I believe there's someone there, and I believe that they're inside. And um, they're inside, but they'll come outside because there are also buildings that look like they're intact that are
Yeah.
being used. There looks like there are roads up there. There are people who are getting imagery of craters with lights dotted around them that look like parking lots,
Yeah.
right? And
Yeah.
that they're supposed to be ships. And what were those things that all of those astronomers seen moving across the surface? One of them even said they thought they saw some kind of animal or insect moving across the surface of the moon,
I
going
think I
across.
saw something about that. Yes.
So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, and so when you look at the moon, you don't know all of this is going on unless we're talking about it, or people don't know. So I've kind of made it my job to try to get the news out to people, so to make them think, because I think we're going into an age where we're going to have to come to terms with not being alone. Now, how can, in the universe, so people would say, how can someone be living on the moon with the temperatures, the coldness, and the darkness, and the blah, blah, blah. But frankly speaking, we are a young species. Uh,
I say
uh,
that
you know,
all the time. Yeah, we are a young species. Mm-hmm.
They didn't have to grow up on the moon. They could have come in. It could have been, these could be totally different beings that started out originally, and they could have the technology to move around on a planet that is not hospitable,
Mm-hmm.
or to live inside, or it can have some sort of, costuming, or suits, not costumes,
That's what
suits,
I'm thinking
suits.
as I'm hearing you talk. It almost seems like appearances can be deceiving. So it's camouflage to look like what it might look like to say us. We only speak from our perspective, right? People thought it was just a chunk of a rock and way up in the sky that illuminated, right? And then why does it illuminate every night? Were you able to look at that too? Like if it really is a spaceship, what's their power source? How are they illuminating it? Why does it have so much pull on all of humanity or anything living and even water on this planet? Like, why are we like tied together with an umbilical cord almost? Like, what is it?
Yeah, I don't know.
Mhm.
I don't know, but I do know they have seen, the astronauts reported seeing domes, lighted domes. So if you
Mhm.
look at some of the transcripts, and I think I have it uh, in my first book, actually, I talked about them in the second one, but I think I had the transcript where they said, that they saw domes lighted, and it looks like some sort of energy going on down there. And they also said that something I was studying said they come up. The domes seem to pop up here and there, which makes me think some are lit sometimes and some are not lit. But the idea is that there's some sort of energy source within the moon that is lighting up these domes. These domes.
You must have had a
Yeah.
field day with Augie Nost because on his website, augienost.com, I know you know, he has so many incredible pictures of unusual things on the earth and caught on the moon and caught on Mars. And he tells you where he's gotten them from and where you could find them with longitude, latitude, say on Mars. And then let's talk about, have you come across anything with pyramidal structures on the moon? Did you, in
Oh
your
yeah.
research?
Yeah.
Mhm.
So in my, let's see, I guess it's my new book, The Galactic. I actually get them a little confused sometimes. Excuse me, audience. The Galactic Earth book. Well, I put them that there are pyramids on the moon in the moon book. In the Galactic Earth book, I went to a little more detail and talked about how the pyramids may be some sort of universal symbol. Okay, so they found and have pictures of the pyramids on the moon. Fascinating stuff. But we've got pyramids all over the Earth, and then they found something on Mars. Then they
And
found something on Venus.
under the
They've got
earth?
some sort of strange monolith on Phobos of Mars, one of Mars's moon, that looks like a monolith. Maybe it's a pyramid. Um, and it's just, we just wonder now if it's a universal symbol. So I know I saw that Misha or
And Michelle?
Michelle
Yeah.
was talking about the moon in Atlantis, and this kind of ties in with
Here,
what
I'll
she was.
highlight that for you because it was a good comment. So she
Yeah.
said, I'm just reading it because 80% of our audience is audio. So Michelle says, for a while, I thought that maybe the moon was a chunk of Earth and that's where Atlantis went. Is that the one you were talking?
So yeah, I don't think it was a chunk of Earth, but I do think it was connected to Atlantis and the pyramids. So there's legend or tradition or a story somewhere. I can't cite the source right now, but it was basically saying that Atlantis had been a part of the moon. Part of the moon was a property of Atlantis. So the Atlanteans had the ability to fly. And the idea was that they could fly into outer space and that they had put a city that was a part of Atlantis on the moon, is what I'm trying to say. And that is a story. Now, it hasn't been proven, we can't prove it, but I find that very interesting because we've got the pyramids here and we've got the same look of pyramid on the moon. Could there have been an Atlantean connection? But even if there were not an Atlantean connection, we have stories here, especially in the Indian writings, the ancient Indian writings, that the gods could fly. They went to space, and I believe it may have been Shiva that went to the moon.
Mm-hmm.
All right, and so even if Atlantis didn't do it, we have evidence that we did go to the moon. The gods did, or the gods took people there. Somebody was going back and forth from Earth to the moon, and we have symbols, at least with the pyramid, and other monoliths that have been found up there that resemble the Washington Monument. That we have the same symbols on both planets, which looks like we were connected. Now, what's interesting is the moon has craters that look like they were bomb craters. They were
Yeah.
from an atomic weapons. And so do we have that here in some of the, jungles on the earth and like South America, they found cities and areas that look like, they were bombed long before we created the atomic bomb.
Mm-hmm.
And the story is that there was some sort of galactic war,
Yep.
either
I've heard
between
that.
Earth and the moon and Mars, or the three of us fighting against someone else out there. But yeah, so there's definitely a connection, and it could have been an Atlantean connection. Atlantis, I believe Atlantis was real.
I do. Yeah.
Plato said Atlantis was real. I don't know why people don't believe Atlantis was real. They believe everything else that Plato says, but they won't adopt that. Even though he said it was real, people say, no, 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 it wasn't. No, no, he was just telling a story. So I believe there very well may have been an Atlantean connection.
Mm-hmm. See, now I work with two ladies and we connect with spirit. And we've connected, we believe, with some scientists of the past. They found us, we didn't find them. And again, I've had somebody ask me privately, well, what if it was, say, an extraterrestrial species appearing in that form? Does it really matter? We know that they're benevolent. We know that they're not telling us what's coming, but they're giving us certain things to do, like with energy work and things like that. But the pyramids have come up and talking about looking at all the pyramids around the world, how they correlate to all the stargates and the solar system up above. And also they had asked us to not forget about the ones beneath the earth too. So, and when you start digging into the pyramids, I'm beginning to wonder if they were some sort of energy generator or if there was some kind of correlation. Because even when you go back to the periodic table, and I didn't know this till recently, that they knocked off a whole chunk off the periodic table when it goes into ethers and all that kind of stuff, right? Too. So I don't know. Did you come across anything like that with the pyramids? Anything more? Or what are your thoughts on the pyramids with all of this? Besides,
Uh,
said possibly like a signal, you said, right? Or a symbol or connector.
some sort of universal symbol, or I mean, I don't know as much detail about the pyramids and energy, and I know that it is thought that they, had some sort of energy connected to the stars and Orion, I think it is. But I don't know much about
It's
how that.
always fascinated me because even Stonehenge and stuff, they almost match star constellations
Right,
above.
right.
So, and
That's
then
true.
we've got the moon, and then we're going to transition. We're going to run out of time. I'm hoping you're going to come back because I know everybody's going to be messaging me afterwards. Can you have her back? Can you have her back?
We have a whole hour
I
left.
know it's going to fly though, because I want to transition also into the companion book about the Earth, because that's where I'm going with this. Like, here we are, we've got our moon, and I know there's other things if you want to talk about the moon book, there's so much to go through. You guys, you're going to have to just go out and buy these books because you are such a wealth of knowledge. And like I said, I had some of your books even before I knew you, because I really did learn so much. You've got a great writing style. You provide so much information. So, like, did you find any more connection to the moon, to the earth? Like, do you think they're like guardians then? Or what could that be, do you think?
Oh, some of these theories go, really, really deep. So, for example, uh, if the if the moon were brought in here, and it pretty much shows that it was brought here in part, then the question would be who really was on that thing, and
Who brought it here?
who brought it here. So there is a tribe out of Africa
Mhm.
who said that the moon, in their tradition, they believed that the moon was sent across the universe. They called it an egg, that this egg was hollowed out by two brothers, two extraterrestrials apparently, and sent across the universe and placed here. And that was written thousands and thousands of years ago. And, I believe it was the Doggin. The Doggin was giving information of Sirius, but I'm forgetting the name of this tribe. It may have been the same, and I apologize if I'm forgetting that. Anyway, that was written thousands of years ago, and then you have the Russian scientists saying the same thing. So, but the question is, who was on it? Now, these reptilian gods,
Mhm.
according to the tribe, these guys look like reptiles, you know, beings brought this thing over. It doesn't mean that there's who's in there, but it doesn't mean there isn't either, or there weren't. We don't know what they look like. We don't know who they are. We don't know why they came other than to help Earth. But the question that's very interesting is, did any of them leave the moon and come to Earth? If you had a species of being that was escaping, I don't know, a sun blowing up, and they're flying across the universe to find a new home, and they end up here. Did they stay on the moon, or did they come here, or some of them here, or have they been going back and forth the whole time?
Well, I guess it depends who you talk to, right? Because my belief about that is, and then you get into, were you thinking of, is it Enki and Enki?
No, I don't
No,
think it's.
that's
I
not.
don't think it. I know a lot of people think it's the Anunnaki. All right, they do. They think it's
No,
the Anunnaki.
no, because I've heard I know I'm mixing up two stories here, but I was
Okay.
thinking of the African story. But okay, so it's not the Anunnaki, but I've also heard about the reptilians too. And they
Mhm.
get, you know what? There's a lot of ET species, once you dig into this, get a really bad rap. And I'm not
Mhm.
saying that there isn't, but what people forget, I think, especially on this planet, in this, I don't know, I'm missing the word I want to say right now, but where we are, we're in a duality, right? So it wouldn't be too far to think that not one species can be completely evil, right? There's got to probably be some good and some negative. Plus, my co-host David had a really interesting point that really made me think.
Mhm.
He said, okay, so what if we wipe out the good and the bad, or the evil and the good, or whatever you want to call it, and we just call it neutral? But because we're looking at something with our human eyes and we call it evil or negative, maybe it's perfectly acceptable and a positive thing from where that being may come from. I never thought of that before. And we're looking at it right with our eyes, that in our society and our beliefs and our customs and cultures, that that's perfectly evil. And when he said that, because he had a guide, he believes, as a child that was a reptilian. And I've heard many people say they've had, same as Anunnaki, then you get in, I mean, there's so many different beings from different planets that people connect with and say that they have guides with them. I don't know. Like,
I see.
or like you say, maybe the reptilians did come down here. Maybe they are here.
Yeah, no, that is. I don't know that if they really are associated with them, but I do believe they're out here, and it took me a long time to even think that that could be a truth because
We get a bad rap is where I'm going with this, and I don't think that's right. I think that we have a duality. So just as in any other species, and maybe I'm ignorant and looking at it with human eyes, but I'm trying to be fair here. Like,
well, it's just like it's just like you're on Earth with groups. There are good and bad in every group. I
yes.
do believe that. There was this one woman, and I was reading about her, and I mean, I didn't talk to her. I don't know if the story is true. It's something I came across where she was riding in driving in the desert. I think she was going from California to Nevada or something,
Okay.
and it was a long strip. As you go out there. Anyway, she saw something in the road, and she stopped, or she had to stop, and it turned out to be, she said, a reptilian being.
Mm-hmm.
And she didn't feel frightened. She said the energy was so good, and it was like it had placed itself there to greet her on purpose. And it did. It greeted her in a friendly way. I don't. He wasn't really talking, but he was like
Telepathically.
telepathically communicating,
Mm-hmm.
and basically, put her at ease and let her know that he wasn't there to harm her or anybody.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't forget that because all I've heard is that they are the opposite of that.
Mm-hmm.
So that story does come to mind. When I think about that lady, she said, I mean, she was so shocked, but she got in her car and left, and she wrote about this story, and it's been on the internet. So that just shows that you're right. There's a duality, and I do believe that. And the same goes for the Greys. The Greys it's my understanding is that there are many different kinds, and
Mm-hmm.
that they're not all evil.
Agreed.
Some are, and some aren't. In fact, I've heard of stories where people have been in communication with them, and they were their little protectors, and they gave them information and they healed them. And then you have the flip side. So you've got good and bad and in groups on Earth.
Mm-hmm.
With the war going on, I'm sure there's good and bad in both groups. You can't, pigeonhole. Is that the word? You know, a
I
group.
agree exactly with what you're saying. And to me, my question is because I was so, and I haven't had a chance yet to read your books, and I look forward to in the future being able to. But to me, that makes perfect sense with what you're saying about the moon, that it's not just this rock sitting in the sky. And I haven't believed that for a very long time. But then it brings so many questions, like who brought it here, like you said. Um, I almost like if you feel into it, I almost feel like it was a mixed group of people, actually benevolent, because if they weren't benevolent, you know what? I had this conversation with Joe Montaldo the first year I was here, and he said, let's face it, people are so terrified about extraterrestrials. He goes, they're so advanced compared to us. If they had wanted to do something, they would have done it eons ago. And they would have. I think they would have. Maybe they haven't traveled here yet, the bad ones. I don't know. But I don't, and especially with everybody having a camera and catching how much in the sky and what's going on. Like, are we getting more visitors, do you think? Or do you think it's other agendas with
No,
being
I think
careful?
we're getting some visitors. I think we're getting more. We've always had them.
I
They
agree.
have been here since the beginning, but we're getting more lately, and I think that's because something is going to happen. You were saying something about the Galactic Federation. You were
Oh, I
going to.
sure was because, okay, so what happened was, I have my finger in many different arenas, looking at many different things, just because it's always good to try and stay on top, because I do a lot of shows too. You never know what you're going to talk about. And this came from an ex-CIA agent that's no longer with us, and it had no business belonging in his blog. And it just happened to pop up in my feed, and I don't know why I looked at, well, wait, there's no coincidences, so I guess I was meant to read it. And I started reading this blog, and there's a whole YouTube channel, and then it started talking about the Galactic Federation and all this other stuff. And ever since then, I've always had my ears open to it. Now, Julie, I saw your question. You asked what the series is called on Gaia. I don't know, because like I said, I don't get Gaia, but it's been coming up in my YouTube feed, and I haven't been looking at anything ET or extraterrestrial, so I don't know why it has, but it's been advertised frequently. And there's a Canadian that was high up in the Canadian government, Paul Hellyer. I'm sure you've heard his name before, Constance.
Mm-hmm.
And he's talking about the Galactic Federation. Now, I wish I could remember the other gentleman's name, because it wasn't from the US government. It was from another government working in that program and talking about the Galactic Federation.
Oh, that was his Haman Ashid. I'm trying to remember the gentleman's name from Israel. He was a general. He wrote a book, and he says I'm basically he's old and he's
They're
been
both old,
desperate
yeah.
and got as much money or whatever that he needed. I remember I was standing in my kitchen a couple of years ago, and I tell this story on podcasts sometimes because I was so shocked. They were talking about a book he had, and he was saying that we have men on Mars and they're working with extraterrestrials and they work with the Galactic Federation. And I kind of turned around, I was cooking, and I went, oh my God, I can't believe he outed the Galactic Federation. I was so shocked to hear that on mainstream news. I had heard about the Galactic Federation, 30 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And but no one ever talks about it. And that's the Galactic Federation, and I think they're connected to the Ashtar Command.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure that they're not one and the same.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, just those two names I had heard many, many, many times as titles. They're out there, and they are supposedly these were the guys that Gene Roddenberry was connecting with, and they are also rumored to be helping Earth. Now, why would they be helping Earth? Why would anybody be helping Earth? And I've been thinking about this for a while, and that is because we are new and we are defenseless. Yes, there is a duality, so that means there are the good and the bad. And the Earth is a precious, I would think, commodity out there in the galaxy because of all the life and all of the resources. And who knows what bad things people may want to do, when it comes to Earth. It just looks like it's the Federation that may be protecting us. Not only that, but they're also said to be having ships in the vicinity so that if there is a worldwide catastrophe, at least some life can be saved and lifted off.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, that's really something.
This is the guy's name. It didn't give me the name, but it was a former Israeli space security chief. Yeah,
Uh-huh.
it was him. I knew it wasn't from the U.S. He speaks well, really good. So I was looking. Sandra said, "Guy has a search option." Well, I won't be able to look it up right now. I'll have to look it up after. I took a quick look while we were talking, but I knew he wasn't from the U.S. And Galactic Messages, I think that's what it's called. I just saw it on Gaia. So, yeah. So you've known about it for a long time. And it makes awful good. Like, I could see why people are skeptical, especially if they followed Star Trek, not realizing that that's not the egg, that's the chicken, really, right? If Gene Roddenberry was sitting in on these sessions,
Mm-hmm.
right, and he heard about
Mm-hmm.
the Galactic Federation, and then you hear about it in a TV series, right? So I think that's why people have a hard time believing in it.
Well, one thing is that uh, it is speculated that the extraterrestrials are using science fiction in the media to educate people
Mm-hmm.
on Earth
Oh, yeah.
because there is something coming. So people are more open due to that show to there being beings on the moon and out in space and on ships. And more people are fascinated by it, even though some think it's kind of ridiculous. I mean, I have one of my best friends who said, "Oh yeah, Constance, you believe in science fiction. You like science fiction." So that's what they consider what I'm talking about and working on science fiction because we have that group that needs to be more educated. We have a mass landings here at some point.
Well,
What's
the
going to
thing
happen? They don't know about
people
it.
don't realize, there's an old saying, right? Art imitates life. And
Yeah.
there's also something, I'll be careful, I'll spell it just in case because we're on YouTube. But PREDICTIVE programming. And if you guys take a look at certain things, we can even talk about, I'm not saying that it's like art is identical, say, in the Matrix, but there are some concepts that you look at within that series. Or another one I've been looking at is the Da Vinci Code, because I am a huge fan of symbols, symbology. I love doing code breaking for puzzles, like not even crosswords, like code breaking, things like that. And that's the problem. People, and I think it's my current husband I'm with, that I've been with for quite a few years, made me realize that there's so much that goes on when you walk in a room that people don't look at. They don't pay attention to. They don't pay attention to the little details or the overt signs and symbols that are out there. They're sending us messages. There's lots of messages all around us. We just filter it out, right? And look at the big picture. So I believe exactly what you said. Yes, I think they are sending us information and messages through, if you will, science fiction programming or whatever it may be. Mm-hmm.
So I think that the extraterrestrials are controlling a lot of this in a positive way. And what I mean is, the people. I don't want to say that they're wrong, but they do blame the government, a lot for not
Yeah.
more information. But I also think that the extraterrestrials are limiting what we can get because they told the same gentleman from Israel that you were talking about earlier.
Mm-hmm.
They said, humanity can't know yet because they're not ready.
And they're
So I
not.
wonder if sorry?
They're not. Look at January 1st at Bayside Mall in Florida. The craziness that ensued.
Right, right. So I mean, the extraterrestrials may have a time schedule that we're just not aware of. And also we may be shielded to a point where, we can't get but so much information because they won't let it out. There is thought that we're kind of quarantined from some things that are going on out in the galaxy until we're
Interesting.
ready. Where
Because
we're
we're a
kind of
young race. Now, I knew this was going to fly by. I know I said that to you before we went live. We only got about a half hour left. Let's talk about the companion book. We've barely scratched the surface with your moon book, and I know that we haven't, but that's good because then people, I mean, I want them to come out and buy your books because she really does have fantastic books. So let's talk about the companion book.
so this is this is this is the companion book. It looks
Okay.
similar in the coloring to
Yeah.
it's the Earth's galactic history. So basically, what I wanted to do with this book is let people know what's going on out there. That are so your audience is so educated and informed, but like I said before, there are people that don't know, and
Lots.
I want yeah I want them to be able to start someplace
Mhm.
because I do get questions, contrary to my friend that thinks I write science fiction. I do get questions from on the other side as to what's going on out there. And this was a good place to start. I couldn't get it all in, so I'm working on another book. But it takes us from the beginning of our history, to up to now, as to some things that have been going on with extraterrestrials and how they have been interacting with us, and how I give theories in the beginning of what just may have happened in way back when humans first appeared on Earth.
Mhm.
If you take away religion, um, yeah, because the book isn't religious at all.
Mhm.
Um, but it talks about perhaps the Earth being terraformed by extraterrestrials.
I agree.
That may be where
Mhm.
some of this started. They don't have really, the scientists is really frustrating for them, but they don't have the answers to how life started on Earth. They don't have the answers as to where the moon came from either. If I didn't say that, by the way, they don't know. They have theories, and all of the theories have fallen by the wayside. And so they're still trying to figure out how we came to be. So I talk about the theories, the theory that the Earth was terraformed, that there are advanced beings at a very, very high level and high age that had the means to do so. And it's not something that we are not talking about. If you go to NASA's website, they talk about the idea of maybe one day terraforming worlds. And, humanity wants to spread themselves into the universe. And perhaps there are others who beat us to that. And that may be how we got here in the first place. So they terraformed the earth and they brought in all of these things.
Mm-hmm.
And then at some point, they created primates and other life forms, or, seeded them.
Yep.
However, the theories are in the book. They may have seeded it, or they may have had panspermia,
Mm-hmm.
which is a seeding, and then there's the direct panspermia, which is just trying to seed the earth. Once they terraformed it, trying to get, life to start here, and, were the result, or not. It could have just been the primates, and it could have been a whole other thing. They talk about Anunnaki coming in and creating humans and using
So many
primates,
people don't.
right?
That's where the Enki and
Yeah,
I forget the other twin's name. But
right.
when you look at where the Dead Sea is, and you see aerial platform views of it, and it looks like it's been scorched, and there's still high EMF and radiation coming from that area, right? So yeah, what are the answers? Did you come to a conclusion? And I don't expect you to give it away, but did you come to a conclusion, or is there something you still just sort of left it up to the reader?
No, I left it up to the reader.
I love that.
No, I just think that we need to come together and have these discussions,
Mm-hmm.
and we need to have roundtables on Zoom or whatever, wherever, all the time, trying to figure out who we are, how we got here, where we came from. I don't think that we can just take stories that were created 2,000, 3,000 years ago and call that a fact anymore, especially when those stories don't line up with the evidence.
Well, the
And
genetic markers, like that's when I started the show talking about that, with the Rh negative blood, with the green eyes, with the red hair. And I've heard Joe saying two different numbers. He said it didn't exist before 70,000 years ago. And I've heard him say around 20,000 years ago, but many thousands of years ago, that was not part of the human being's genetic makeup. Where did it come from?
definitely were, if we weren't created here, we were tampered with.
Mm-hmm.
All right. It looks like, I'm not a scientist, so I can't address all of that. And, but yeah, so there are a lot of theories, and that we could be the product. It's been said that we're the product of several ET races getting together and making us. And then you also have the Anunnaki story, which is really compelling. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
and there's also the idea, you know, if we got here via the Anunnaki story, if there were not other ETs already here. See, it talked about them being in one area of the world. It didn't talk about them being all over the world. And there apparently were other beings here. If people are going to go by the Genesis story, which is really, similar to the Anunnaki story, which they're saying it is the same thing, just two different, books with the same story. You know, uh, Cain and Abel. All right, Cain killed Abel, and Cain was told to leave. And Cain was like, well, there's somebody else out
Actually,
there.
they are really similar, aren't they? Now that I think about it.
Yeah, there's someone else out there. So they're saying these two stories really are the same. Who are, I always say, if you believe the story, then who else out there? So my point is, there may have been more than one group of humanoids that got here in the beginning, if they weren't created, or they were created here and some others came in. Because we have evidence all over this planet that there may have been uh, beings that existed before humans appeared,
Mhm.
before our written history. They're finding things that date back crazy numbers that existed before we ever came about. Who
Or
are
things
they?
that we're hearing about. Like the other thing that I am fascinated by are giants. Like we are hearing stories about giants. Are they ET? Where did they come from? Dragons, all of these things. My theory is if we're hearing about these things, the Fae, dragons, giants, and we're hearing stories of people's encounters with giants, even.
Mhm.
So my theory is that if it didn't exist and we go back years before there was TV and all this stuff, right? Hundreds of years ago, what did people do? Work very hard and, would have their last meal of the day. And then they usually sat around by the campfire, right? And depending on what culture you were in, the elder would sit and tell stories of old. Now, to me, if there wasn't some kind of truth to it or something, they would have disappeared. And we still hear about it to this day. And then now with the advent of technology, and again, I always have to keep it in the back of my mind that I know, yes, deep fake technology is out there. People can pretty well make anything look like it appears and it's real and what have you. But we're going back quite a few years now. I've seen a few clips, rough and grainy, mind you, of dragons starting to be caught in the sky. Or, there's all these creatures that we run into. Or when you go back through history, that's interesting. You brought up about other races, because I have heard of a race of people. They classified them as people, but they had dog heads, but they were bipedal, and they had their own language and their own kind of, if you will, I don't want to call it a tribe, but big, huge group of people. Where did they come from? They lived like humans, but they look like dogs and they walk like humans. So I almost have to say, like, I give a lot of credence to that there has to have been more than one extraterrestrial species here. And were they creating life and just the humans won out? Or I don't know.
Or came here different times,
Hmm.
different ships. The
Yes.
Earth is pretty big, you know, and they could have been here before, humanity
Or
showed
we
up. Or
look at
however.
humans right now. Okay. So I always say this, and I truly believe it, that we are immortal. We are everlasting as a soul. And with many, and I know you believe this too, and many lifetimes we've had. And I've run into so many people, whether they're talking about it or you've read about it, or even some people I've interviewed, that that they'll have an encounter, say with an ET race, and the ET race will say, "Don't you remember me? You are part of our family," and the person doesn't remember. And it would be very foolish, first of all, to assume that we're the only intelligent race in this universe. Second of all, if we have many, many, many lives, yes, we've had lives as other species. We have to have had, I believe, rather than just a human existence. What do you think?
Yeah, I've been thinking about this, a while, and it seems to me that, wow, this gets a little complicated and deep. So let's just say we have our real self living inside of this suit,
Yeah.
body,
Mhm.
avatar. Okay,
Yeah,
and you can
I
call
like
it
it.
the soul. You can
Mhm.
call it the soul. I don't like
I
to
like
use the word.
Avatar.
Okay, no. I mean the person inside of the avatar, our true self. We can
Yeah.
call it a soul, light being, astral being, whatever you want to call it. All right. Now that we could have been our original self and then go into different lives to experience. And really, what's important is that life you are in, at the moment, that's what we're living and
Yeah.
feeling and thinking. And then we leave and come out and we can go to another world
Mhm.
and experience. That is one theory. However, we can also be that soul that went into a world that understands they can leave the body and go yet into another world
Mhm.
and die. Say, let's say they go to Earth, they're born in Earth, die, and then go back to the world they were
Mhm.
visiting before they
Yeah,
go back to the original place. Does that make sense?
absolutely.
There's like two deaths almost. So
It
you
kind
got
of
this,
goes along with a
you got
theory.
this,
I'm going to throw
sorry?
a monkey wrench in. I'm going to throw a monkey wrench into this because I love where you're going with this.
Mhm.
Is if the past, present, and future are all happening at the same time,
Mhm.
and there is no time other than on Earth, it's a man-made creation, right? So, and I know as a medium that So I got a dog hair, my cat's or cat hair, one or the other. Anyways, so I believe there is actually even just a portion of us, if you will, the soul, whatever it is that stays. I call it back home. You can call it whatever you want. And then, so all of these lives we're experiencing, right, are all happening at the same time, past, present, future, all of them. So it makes kind of lends credence to what you're saying, that you could almost leave your body, go into, because I think there are people that can do that, that can go in between. This is going to sound real crazy. People are probably going, what are you talking about? But I think we could go from life to life to life if you really knew how, because some people are born with talents that just come naturally, or if you were taught or raised to believe that all people could do that. So yeah, you could die in one life and go back to the previous one you're in. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yes,
Mm-hmm.
that's a whole other thing and a whole other level. And I hadn't looked at it that way.
Yeah. So
Interesting.
and you know where I learned this was I've been fascinated by channelers. And one of these days I probably will dig into it because I keep feeling called to it. But I've always been able to automatic write. Nobody's shown me. You just kind of go into trance, you know what you write, and you just start writing. And I'm left-handed to begin with, so it's a mess usually by the end of it. And then I always was trying to understand when you kept hearing the past, present, and futures happening at the same time. Well, logically, how could that be? And so it's called the Next Level Soul podcast. And I happened to turn it on. He's got people from all aspects of life in the way of our field, near death experiences, like just incredible people with incredible experiences. He's had a lot of channelers on there, and one of them who says they channel a council of angels. I believe her name's Belinda. She comes from a science background, never planned on doing this. And it made so much sense and I'm not doing it justice the way I've just shared it, but the way she explained it, I suddenly all of a sudden understood why the past, present, and future are all happening at the same time. And it kind of makes sense because I know as a medium, that, and my co-host David will say the same thing, we can still connect with somebody who's supposedly reincarnated into another life. We could still connect with them back, if you will, back home. How could that be? You will get mediums that will say, well, no, it can't be done, they've reincarnated. But something spirit gave me before was what we perceive becomes what we believe, and it becomes our reality. So if you believe it's not possible, it's not possible. But if you believe it to be so, and we really are part of source, or wherever we come from originally, where the soul comes from, that's a creator, that's a manifester. So we have that within us, right? It's
Mhm.
all about mindset and how powerful our minds are. Am I losing everybody out there? I don't know, but it makes sense, right?
We're very powerful.
Yes. Yeah.
We're not, these little by souls, like my night souls,
Or here
that
by
don't have a
accident.
say in our destiny. That, sorry?
Or here by accident.
Right. Or have no power over our destiny or our soul. Or no, we're not like that. We're very powerful, and we come from a powerful source and a
Yeah.
powerful place. And we're more than we remember and more than we know. And we can manifest things,
Anything.
situations, events because we are powerful.
Mhm.
But people don't know it. And it's just one more thing that we need to talk about.
Mhm.
Keep this going so we can progress and lift ourselves up in this world, because whatever's going on, somehow this I don't know, this is the part I can't explain, how it got to be so negative with all of the powerful people coming and going. Why are they coming and going? Are there really some people that got trapped here, are stuck here, or are not ascending, or not going, or that is affecting on another world or in the universe? Because there has to be a reason people keep coming in here trying
What
to
we
help this
perceive
world.
becomes what we believe, and it becomes our reality. And when you work with the paranormal, or you work with, and I have with souls that believe they're trapped, or believe they can't leave, or they won't leave because they're trapped in religious dogma, that is no insult in any way. And I always say, if you need religion in your life, you go do what you need. If it works for you, great. But there are souls that believe that hell exists. There are souls, like when they leave here, right, because of the religious dogma, not remembering the past lives, and they're stuck here. but they're not really stuck. They're stuck by their own belief systems that they can't go on because of what they think awaits them for their misdeeds that they've done in this lifetime, right?
Right.
It's all about
Right.
mindset, I think. The
Is it
power of the
something?
mind. I know I could be wrong. I don't have all the answers, but it just makes sense.
But it's good to talk about it. That's my whole thing. That's my whole thing with writing the books. We need to be talking and trying to get answers.
We got some great comments here. I'm going to read them quickly. So Julie Jean Bassett says you can do that with animals that have reincarnated too, meaning when we were talking about passing from life to life and how you had said you could die in another life but go back to the other. Sandra Sharp says, how else would you be able to revisit your own past lives if you couldn't speak to a spirit who's already incarnate?
How else would you be able to visit?
I'm having a hard time wrapping my mind around that. You might have to explain a little deeper, Sandra, unless you get
Yeah.
what you're saying. Or were you asking a question, Sandra? She'll type it in there. I know she will. So Marshall says, and I have to agree, Marshall, with this comment. Trying to envision my past, present, and future at once makes my peripheral vision go nuts. Yeah, it does.
Yeah.
So what else is covered in the companion book? So you just looked at all of these theories about how did we get here, and
Yeah,
then
and that's the first chapter.
oh my God, that's just the first chapter. Holy cow! Okay, so what else have we? What else did you cover? You did
Um,
a bit.
okay, so I talk about the extraterrestrials in the ancient past, and a lot of people are already familiar with
Yes.
the idea that the gods had come in and helped us. I do want to say, though, that extraterrestrials in our ancient past made themselves known. They lived and walked among people. They did think, a lot of them thought they were gods, but a lot of them didn't. Most of the cultures talk about star people coming in,
Yeah.
and they see them as people, literally people from the stars, not gods and goddesses. And they lived and worked among people, and sometimes they even interacted with them and married them. There's
Mm.
one story in there talked about a star being coming in, married a woman, had a child, took them back.
Oh,
Okay. So I go into all kinds of accounts of our ancient past, but some of the more fun stuff. And my favorite one is the chapter 4, the oceans, Earth's final frontier. So we see a lot of UFOs today
coming out of the ocean.
coming in and going out of the ocean.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, they're called USOs when they are in the ocean. And the question is, who are they? Where they come from? Why are they here? In fact, this book, I just have to quickly say, covers almost every corner of the earth. Almost every corner of our earth has been touched by extraterrestrials in
Yes.
one way or another that people are not aware of. There are people who do not know that there are UFOs flying into the water. Okay, there
Mm-hmm.
are, and they've been seen. I've got Christopher Columbus in there, who
Wow.
saw USOs. He called them lights because these lights were flying around us and hit the ocean, went to the ocean, and there was light in the ocean. They've been around, all right, but who's down there? So, uh, one lady wrote a story anonymously, and even though this is not a proven story, it was just too fascinating to not put into the book,
Okay.
because she said that she worked, this anonymous person said she worked for an organization, and that they had gone to look at beached whales one year that were, they were dead, and it looked like someone had cut meat out of the whales. It looked like they used a laser type tool to extract cylinders of meat. And I thought, cylinders of meat out of whales? Someone was eating whale meat?
Mm-hmm.
And so they called in uh, all of this equipment, the Navy, to bring all this equipment and go down there and see what was down there, what was going on in the deep waters. And they found what looked like humanoid beings down there that had weaponry and vehicles and housing spaces. Now, what's interesting is that when they moved around, you could see lights, and and they actually fired on the submersible with the equipment. Can we prove that story? No, but it was so interesting, because she said this one we can't prove it, but at the same time, there's a story out of Russia. Russia has declassified a lot of its UFO files. And one story, and it's a very famous story for people who follow this stuff, where the Russian Navy was under the deep waters, and they came across extraterrestrials, and they were ordered to try to catch them. And they went and tried to capture one of these guys. It was humanoid. These ETs were in suits as well. They said they looked more sophisticated, like more sophisticated equipment than them.
Wow.
But they went to catch them, and two of them died because they were fired on by some sort of equipment, not some sort of weapon. And the Russian Navy lost two people, and the others came back injured. So
Wow.
that's why I think this woman, I don't think everyone's making up stories. I think her story was true. And I don't think the Russians were making it up, and they put it in their files. I mean, there's not even a doubt about their story. So now, who were down there? They could have been extraterrestrials that came in. Maybe they too were escaping a planet. Maybe they were aquatic beings that came in, or if they could do both, be on land and in the ocean, but they live in the oceans to avoid humans because they can. They have the technology to put housing down there. It
The
also,
oceans are less than 10% looked at around the world. I know you know this, but for people listening, what a perfect place to hide.
we've actually explored more of the moon than we have of our oceans, and we've explored less than 1% of the moon surface.
Mhm.
So we don't know what's down there. We can't go down there, but apparently there are beings that have the technology to do so. So our scientists will say nothing can be down there because we can't get down there. But then again, like the moon, they're not explaining the lights moving around through there. They're not talking about Russia's declassified information. They're not talking it to the people who have seen in Florida, in California, in other areas, UFOs going into the waters. But they could be living down there because they needed somewhere to live, or they could be living down there to mine the oceans, or they could be living down there to monitor humanity. But they're there. It's a thing.
I believe it. I believe it. We're almost out of. I hope you'll come back.
Yeah,
Constance, it's too long since the last. It's been almost 4 years since I had you on. So
I can't believe the time.
I'd love to have you back on to talk more about this. Like you guys, Constance is a wealth of knowledge. Like we just touch on this little subject. She knows all kinds of stuff about different topics and equally just as fascinating. So where can people find you? I know somebody had asked early in the interview, as well as what do you got coming up? And more importantly, where can they buy these fascinating books and your others you have written?
Right. So Amazon is the place to go always. If they if you find them, they've run out. You can just Google the title. There's a lot of bookstores carrying them. You'll find them on the internet. But you can go to Adventures Unlimited Press.
Mhm,
I call him the Ancient Aliens publisher because that's David Patrick Childress.
mhm,
He's my editor and publisher. But Amazon is the place to go.
mhm. There
What
you
do I have coming up? I've got 3 books that I'm working on, and they are top secret.
So when the secret's out, Kit, where you going to come back, please, and let
I'd
people
love
know
to come
all
back.
about your books for
Sure,
sure. Because
I'd love to come back, and if you want me to come back before then, I will too. I'd
I'd
like
love
to
to
chat.
I know I'm going to get a ton of comments after this. People are going to go, can you have her back on? Because I
Yeah.
always, like I said, when you came on when I was newer to UPRN and the numbers and people watching, I'm so grateful, but it's really, really grown. So I'm glad
Well,
it's almost like they're getting reintroduced to you on the Angel Rock. So I'd love to have you back on so we can talk about that after. And then if you could tell them about your website too.
website. It's ConstanceVictoriaBriggs.com. If you have any questions or anything, just send me an email through there.
There you go.
Yeah.
People are already going, great, great show, great guest.
Uh,
Thanks, guys. We
Thank you.
appreciate this. Thank you for being here. And I want to
Thank you
say
for having me.
thank you to everybody here in the audience. You guys always show up. Mondays and Thursdays. I know you support our network too, and we really, really, really appreciate that. So if you ever want to get a hold of me to book energy healing, we do Akashic Records. I do psychic. I also do mediumship readings. Usually I just pull whatever needs to come in. I don't make them separate anymore. Just when people book appointments, we just, whatever spirit wants, and they're the person I'm working with, their spirit team wants, I just pull it all in there. So you can get a hold of me. Also, I do mentoring, I should add to, and teaching. What else do I do? I think that's it. You can get a hold of me on facebook.com/the Angel Rock, or better yet, just reach out to me on any social media platform. I'm either under the Angel Rock or Lorilei Potvin. Messenger is usually the fastest and easiest way to get a hold of me. Next week, we have Faye Garza. She used to be on our network. I was recently on her show, Faye's Angels. I think her hubby, Roger, is joining us, and they have Faye's Angels tomorrow night. Latino Psychic Visions is on Wednesday nights, and This Mug's for You on Saturday. They're back to just doing it on Facebook and YouTube, but they're still great friends of the network. So they will be here next Tuesday on the Angel Rock. But stay tuned. Thursday night, Thing at the Foot of the Bed, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time with David Hansel and myself. If you don't know about it yet, we had been promising and promising. We have started it. We have a group on Facebook, The Thing at the Foot of the Bed. We announced it last Thursday. It's grown astronomically, and we're so glad you're all a part of that. We started the group, Constance, because I'm showing lots of clips and things like that, and then to try and show people where it is, we thought we'll put it all in one place. Otherwise, I will see you all Thursday. I thank you again, Constance.
Thank you.
And I send you all so much love and light. But before I go, I forgot to tell you, stay tuned. There's more great content. My friends Philip and Julia Syracuse have the Horsefly Chronicles coming up next. You don't want to miss it. See you on Thursday, everybody. Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.